Good evening, Fernwood. It is your 20th century friend Neil here, and it's time for us to go full on 1970s with an episode of Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. Today we are watching episode 136, the sixth episode of season 2. We had a big week last week as we came in, so let's do some recapping and then we will get started. Mary Hartman has been in a mental ward since her breakdown on live television just at the end of last season. She is more or less getting along, although she does feel the need to get out and see her family who have been kept away from her. Of course, the doctors at the hospital might disagree about whether or not to release her, mainly because she's a celebrity, and Mr. Ackerman, who is in charge of the mental ward, seems to think that having a celebrity will bring more money to them. Tom seems to have gone cold turkey and has a new job and is trying to get back into the home. Heather let him into the house and seemed fairly happy to see that he seemed clean cut and put together. Charlie Haggers is also in the hospital because he got into a bit of violence at the end of last season. This has resulted in his loss of one testicle, for which he feels pretty bad. Loretta is doing her best to be as supportive as she can of Charlie, although she feels some need to be supportive of Jimmy Joe Jeter over in the motel with his father Merle. About them a little bit more later. When it comes to the Shumways, there seems to be a bit of confusion. Martha has lost the whereabouts of George, who disappeared mysteriously one day, and that is because Kathy told him and other members of the family that she is now pregnant and that she does not know who the father is, and that father could be any of the men that she dated all of last season. Now let's get started with a recap of last Friday's episode. It started with Merle Jeters warning Jimmy Joe not to watch television in the bathtub. Of course, Jimmy Joe really said that he would be safe and really wanted to gain as much knowledge as he could for his upcoming sermon. That is interrupted by a brief confrontation between Merle and Loretta as Merle heads off and Loretta says that she plans to take care of Jimmy Joe. Over at the mental ward, Chester Markham tells Mary that he has a nuclear device and that he is ready to level 2,400 square miles, about probably all of Fernwood. She takes this as a delusion, but if we trust the doctor that Chester spoke to just a couple of episodes earlier, we believe that Chester has access to the materials that will make a bomb go. And finally, at the motel room, Loretta leaves Jimmy Joe Jeters alone for a moment in the bathtub watching his television. When the worst thing happens, the television plunges into the bathtub off screen, and we see Loretta have a moment of mourning for Jimmy Joe Jeters. That's our recap. Let's get started with this second week of Mary Hartman Season 2, and we'll talk about it afterward.
Mary Hartman! Mary Hartman!
200, 201, 202.
Mary Hartman? Oh, don't you look lovely?
Do I?
Guess what?
Another injury.
Ta-ta! Surprise.
Mary?
Oh, Tom. Oh, what a wonderful surprise.
You know who I am?
Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've missed you so much.
Oh, Mary. Mary. Oh. You know, I try to get to see you every day, and they just wouldn't let me in. You know, it's the first time they'd let me in to see you.
Could you leave us alone, Mrs. Gimble? I mean, I think we could do this by ourselves.
Very well. I'll be at my station if you need me.
Do you think we'll need her, Tom?
You think we'll need you, Mary? Huh?
I don't think we'll need you, Mrs. Gimble. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. Were you scared? I mean, I'm sorry about, what I said and did. I didn't know what I was saying during,
Oh, well, hey, listen,
while I was breaking up. I was just doing and saying things I didn't know what they were.
Well, forget it, will you? Forget it. Don't even try to remember it, will you? I mean, everything's gonna be okay.
Is it? Were you scared?
Yeah, I was scared just a little, I mean. But, when they explained to me here about, you being under all those pressures and everything, why, I could understand.
Could you? And little Heather?
Yeah, she could understand, too. I mean, believe me, we got a very level-headed kid.
Don't say level to me, not here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Anything you say, okay? Anyway, she's just great.
Is she?
Yeah. And, well, I'm not doing so bad myself.
I'm just so glad to know that the both of you are okay. Did you miss me?
I haven't had a drop of, sense,
Oh, Tom, that's wonderful. I mean, it just shows such inner strength.
Yeah, I've joined AA. And they are helping me to help myself, And, I think I might have a new job, selling RVs.
RVs?
Yeah, recreational vehicles, like Winnebagos and open roads and stuff like that.
I'm so proud.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that we're both pulling ourselves together like this,
Yeah.
Tom, you gotta get me out of here before it's too late.
Too late? What do you mean, too late?
Well, too late. I mean, it's just like I have to make sure that Heather doesn't get to school too late, and I have to make sure that the potatoes aren't ready too late for the meatloaf, and I have to make sure that I don't get to the bank too late to make the withdrawal for the weekend. All those little too lates, Tom. I mean, those little too lates are very important for building up outer strength. You see, you have a nice inner strength now, which and that inner strength will let you sign me out, after you've signed me in. It's the too lates time. You see, responsibilities now are very good for me. They'll be real good for me,
I know, sweetheart. I know. But you gotta listen to me now. Your first responsibility is to yourself. I mean, the doctors told me that. It's just gonna be a little while, just a few weeks, sweetheart.
Why did you commit me, Tom? Why did you do that?
We're gonna have the rest of our lives, sweetheart. Look, they advised me to.
Who?
They did. The best experts here advised me to do that.
Tom? What if I told you that Mr. Markham, he's another patient that's here. What if I told you that I had this feeling about him that he's very dangerous and to us and not only to us, but like maybe to the entire southern half of Ohio. Would you think I was crazy?
Ohio?
You would, wouldn't you?
Mary, look,
Okay, Tom, let me start over, okay? You're Tom, I'm Mary, right? We're the famous Hartmans, right?
Right.
Okay, now when something's going on. I mean, like if I'm seeming crazy because something's really happening, or if I'm seeming crazy because I'm like making it up in my head. You do know that difference, don't you?
Honey, I know you're not crazy. I know that. I know you've just been under a lot of little pressures, that's all.
Okay, well, if I try to explain the exact pressure to you, Tom, would you believe me? The exact pressure.
Sure.
It's very important that you would believe me, Tom, because it's nothing I can pinpoint. I have no concrete evidence, and beside Mr. Markham, he's like the patient that I'm talking about, is like a real sweet man, and I just have this real bad feeling about him.
What do you mean, feeling?
Well, it's just like it's an instinct. It's like something inside me. It's like something I sense about him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Look, why don't you talk to the doctors about this? I mean, just because you got a feeling about this man doesn't really mean he's dead. I mean, the doctors assured me that they keep all the dangerous patients away from the other patients. I mean, honey, I really think you're just overreacting.
I'm not overreacting. I'm not overreacting, Tim. It's in my head. It's in my heart. It's in my gut, Tom. I mean, there's something dangerous about this man. I mean, I'm worried about him. I'm really frightened.
Honey, look, why don't you just talk to the doctors about this, okay?
Tom, why are you doing this to me? I'm not crazy.
Honey, just talk to the doctors, that's all.
But I have talked to them, and they insist that he's no sicker than I am. I'm not sick, Tom. I mean, why won't you trust me, Tom? Why are you doing this to me?
Excuse me just a minute, okay? Excuse me just a minute. Nurse, come in here.
Hello, Mary, dear. Ready for your medication?
You leave me alone. You leave me alone. Tom, why are you doing this to me? I hate you for this.
Now, this is just a temporary setback. Everything will be just fine, won't it, Mary? Just trust us.
Yeah.
Tom, please don't go.
Honey,
Please don't go, Tom. Tom, please. Everyone here is always asking me to trust everyone else. You gotta trust me. Why won't you trust me just this once? Please, Tom, please
Too
don't
much
go.
excitement.
It's gonna be fine.
Too
It's
much
gonna-
excitement.
Kathy! Where you've been? I haven't seen you for days.
I know. I was wondering, can I talk to you for a minute, please?
Oh, sure thing, baby, but not right now. I gotta do a broadcast, okay?
Okay.
Hi, this is Cleet Meisenheimer bringing you tonight's Action News. Today's top story is a sad one indeed. Last night, the little minister, the Reverend Jimmy Joe Jeter, met his maker when a portable television set toppled into his bath and fatally electrocuted the youngster. Death came to the young preacher while researching his next sermon on the horrors of violence. Little Jimmy Joe was outraged not only by the actual occurrences of violence, but also by the coverage of them by some other news stations. Well, this is something that we would like to discuss with our special guest this evening, giving an exclusive interview here on Channel 6, the father of the victim, Mr. Merle Jeter. Welcome, Mr. Jeter. And let me ask you this. What are you thinking about right now?
Well, actually, I was thinking about when you asked me to come down here for this here interview, and I knew that the reason was that you wanted to take advantage of my grief, and I didn't like that. But I've been thinking about it, and I think that what happened is so important to me that I would like to talk about it.
Well, that's a relief. Thank you, Mr. Jeter. Okay, then let me ask you this. Do you hold television directly responsible for your son's death?
No. No, and I know a lot of people are blaming television. And I don't mean just for what happened to Jimmy Joe, but they're blaming television for all kinds of horrible things that are happening all over the place lately. Well, I'll give you an example. I remember a couple of months ago they put a movie on television about these people that were running around setting fire to other people. Well, sure enough, later on that same night, a small group of your hoodlum element takes off after a registered nurse, and they caught up with her in the hospital parking lot, and they touched her off with a couple of them cricket lighters. Well, a lot of people blame television for that, and then the funny thing is they'll turn right around and blame the people who are watching television. Well, Cleet, I've been doing a lot of thinking about things like that since I lost Jimmy Joe. Thinking and praying to the Lord. And incidentally, I'm happy to say that I think I'm in touch with Jimmy Joe now, and I should be talking to him shortly. But getting back to the television, I don't think it's fair to blame television per se. Because, after all, it ain't the television set there that invents what it's saying. It ain't twisting anybody's arm, making them sit down there and watch it. And then, on the other hand, you can't blame the people that watch it either. On the contrary, I don't think that anybody in his right mind would watch that junk if they had something better to do. I know, I read just the other day that your average American is now logging about 6 hours of tube time every day. Now, to me, that's too much. But again, it's not the average American's fault on the average. What's happened to him is that he just feels that he don't matter anymore. He just feels like he's not important anymore. So naturally what he does is he turns inward to himself. Well, that's the problem that exists in this country right now. What's the answer? Far as I can see, we ought to get one of them politicians that's running around out there chasing around after our votes and get him to inspire us to understand that we do matter, that life is good, and there's no reason to hate our neighbors. They're good people just like we are, and I guarantee you that. They ought to inspire us to look for our pleasures with our friends, with our families, and stay away from the television. They got to inspire us to feel that we matter once again.
That's lovely. Thank you, Mr. Jeter. Now, if I may paraphrase what you said for the sake of clarity in our television audience, as you see it, there is a crying need in this country for strong leadership that will...
We need a leader is all I'm saying.
We need a leader, exactly. We need a leader that will be able to improve the quality of living in this country for more, if not all, of the people living here. Is that not so?
That's not exactly it, Clete. I'm just saying we need a leader that can make folks appreciate other folks like it used to be.
Ah, I see. Well, you seem to have a pretty clear understanding of what this country needs.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go along with you on that in as much as that's exactly what I've been talking about.
Mr. Jeter, do I perhaps get an inkling that what you're interested in is perhaps public office or something in the public eye, perhaps?
No, absolutely not.
I see.
No, I have no personal ambitions myself. I would say that one of the many good and important things that Jimmy Joe did tell me before his demise was that if the calling does come, though, a man has got to answer it. I'll stand on that.
Oh, Charlie, I just don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over this terrible tragedy. I mean, it just seems like the whole world's crashing in. I mean, Jimmy Joe just had such a long, wonderful life ahead of him serving the Lord, and now he's gone.
Honey, I don't want you to dwell on it. I mean, you got to erase it from your mind or else it'll just burn you up.
I know, Charlie. I mean, sometimes, you know, I can't control myself. And when I think of how strong and calm and everything Merle was on TV, I mean, it's amazing. That man, I mean, his faith is just so inspirational.
Honey, I don't want ever to hear that fella's name again. Now, I know he's had a loss, but on account of something which I have lost myself, I just don't want to talk about him.
But Charlie, you should have seen him when I had to tell him what happened to Jimmy Joe. I mean, I have never seen a man so grieved, and I mean seriously grieved.
I know, honey.
Over losing a son like Merle was over losing Jimmy Joe.
Well, I just can't help my feelings. I don't want to ever hear his name again.
All right, Charlie, I won't say his name again, but I do have to say it one more time just to tell you this. Now, I want you to really dig deep in the loving Christian heart you got and really try to warm it up a little bit for Merle. Because the way I look at it, honey, I mean, I know you blame him for that stuff, but, well, he's been paid for it.
Honey, what kind of man do you think I am? I'm the last person in the world to wish a retribution like that on anybody. But I can't help but bear a grudge against him. I mean, at least he can have more kids.
Well, Charlie, Jimmy Joe isn't somebody you can just find a replacement for like that. I mean, Merle loved the boy, honey, and he was special.
I know. I like the kid myself. You know, I gotta admit that 8-year-old reverends are hard to find. They're kind of rare these days.
Anyway, Merle can't have another one because he ain't married and you can't have kids if you're not married.
I heard he had plans.
All right. We'll talk about it later, okay?
Something else I want you to promise me. I want you to make me a pledge.
What?
I want you to promise me that you won't tell anybody, I mean anybody, about what happened to me.
Well, honey, they already know.
What?
Well, I mean, everybody knows that you was shot up in the motel and you had to come to the hospital.
Do they know where I was shot?
Well, yeah, honey, in the motel. I mean, everybody... Oh. Well, not everybody knows. I mean, I know, and the doctor knows, and you know, and Tom knows, and probably...
Tom?
I don't... Well, honey, he came here to see you yesterday. Didn't you tell him?
No! I didn't tell him. I couldn't tell him.
Well, Charlie, I don't understand. I mean, he is your very best friend. Why didn't you tell him?
Honey, maybe you just don't understand what losing what I lost means to a man. I just can't tell anybody about it.
Well, Charlie, I mean, I've been talking to the doctors, and I know the doctors have been talking to you, and what they said is that you ain't lost nothing that's important. I mean, you know, that you can't do fine without.
I don't need the doctors. I don't need you to tell me what's lost and what isn't lost. I mean, I understand what's where it ought to be and what ain't, honey.
Well, honey, then you ought to understand that there's plenty there left that's all important. I mean, that's all, you know.
Yeah, sure. In a trauma. Now, what am I supposed to do? Check my traumatized parts into the psychiatric ward along like Mary checked her traumatized head, huh?
Well, Charlie, Mary wasn't traumatized. She was just broken down a little bit.
Well, that's a pretty good description of me.
You know something, Charlie? Dr. Furman, you know, kind of suggested that maybe you should, you know, go see a psychiatrist or something and, you know, just kind of talk about everything that happened because it might help you, you know, get out of the shock of it all just a little bit.
That's about I can't think of anything dumber than to go see a head doctor to fix a part that's pretty far removed from the head, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. All right. We'll talk about it later, okay?
So promise me.
Honey, I'll promise you anything. I mean,
promise me.
It's nothing you should be ashamed about, Charlie.
Promise me you won't tell a soul.
All right, I promise. But what are we going to tell them?
I don't know. I would tell him what I told Tom. I told Tom I had shot myself in the leg. Just, I'll limp a little bit and nobody ever know any better.
Okay, anything you want, baby boy.
Good. Nobody will ever know my shame. And I won't have to ever hear mention of the fellow who done it to me, right?
Right, Sweetie Peach. The only man's name that you're ever going to hear me mention is you.
Some man who never be a man again.
Charlie, you will be. Well, you are. I mean, you are right this very minute. And you know what? I'm just going to prove it to you. Give me that ear, Toots.
No, honey, don't. You know what that does to me.
You sure do know I know what it means. And that's why I'm doing it, and I want you to listen real good to what I'm saying, okay?
Honey, cut out. Honey.
What?
Sweetheart, it's no soap. It's dead as a doornail.
And here we are at week 2. And things seem to be moving towards Mary getting out, but she's still in there. Meeting Tom, I actually found it a warm reunion, and I know that so many viewers have very negative opinions of Tom, and at least he wanted to find her, and apparently, and I trust this, Apparently he did look for her every day, but was turned away several times. Where I do take issue with Tom is that he didn't actually allow Mary to say the thing that she had to say. And as you may know, I believe that letting someone say what they need to say is important, and listening to it and leaving space for someone's pain. That's important. And that is a problem that Tom had in season 1, and it's a problem that Tom still has. I think that Tom was worried that Mary was somewhat delusional, but also he never actually heard what Mary had to say. So even if she is delusional, sometimes letting someone get it out is okay. Then we get a brief appearance of Kathy as she approaches Cleet, probably to tell him about her pregnancy. But that moves right off into Merle starting to make political moves, although playing off as though he wasn't making political moves, if you know what I mean. Everything that comes out of Merle's mouth sounds like gobbledygook to me, so whatever. But he is certainly playing some game, and I hesitate to see where that may lead. And then we get back to Loretta and Charlie, and Loretta has gone through a really traumatic experience and seems to be doing okay with it. I mean, she's been through some trauma, but bounces back more or less. But what's even more troubling is that Charlie is in some kind of crazy denial. Like, he just does not want anyone to know that he lost a testicle. And as much as Loretta begs him to not worry about it, of course, we can't just request someone not feel something, so I get that just asking him to not feel shame or whatever he is feeling is not going to actually work. Like, the request, please don't feel the way you feel, is not really a thing that happens. But I think Charlie is moving to hide some emotions that he needs to figure out a different way to deal with. And, you know, all of his negative feelings towards Merle are completely okay in my eyes. I think that Merle is awful, and probably we're going to be seeing more of that. And that is the start of week 2 of season 2 of Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. Thank you so much for going 1970s with me. We will see you tomorrow night in Fernwood.